Horsford, Barragán, Maxine Waters, American Caucus, and Diaz, and Joe Biden, so
Someone else.
the only thing is a Congressional Black Caucus.
Sound check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sound check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Just tell them it's on channel 2 because I don't know how to change it.
You did? She looks so cute. This is a classic speckle look.
Are you making her face again?
Correct. Yes. Jude.
Judith goes, I do a really nice fit, and she goes, you can do it through the act. And I was, and I was like, oh yeah, like she thought I was going to just hand her like a sweaty ball with her. And then she goes, and I go, you're so offending. And she goes, just be pretty today. And I was like, I'll be so good. I'll be so good, Judith.
Oh boy.
Wait, are you done for the day?
What? What'd you say? You done?
I feel like I should be. You have had a whole day.
Happy this ended well.
Thank you. I am too. I've been hearing about it.
Good morning. I'm Congressmember Nanette Barragán, Chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. It's great to be here with you this morning. We're excited to join Democrats in our conference as we talk about finishing the job. We know the job that we started in the last Congress and getting lots of legislation passed. I'm thankful to House Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar, who's also not only the highest ranking Latino, but a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for convening us here today. The 118th Congress has been interesting to say the least. Certainly one of the most unproductive Congresses under the Republican majority. And I think the fight continues amongst them, which is why we're eager to make sure House Democrats are back in the majority in the next Congress to make sure we can continue to deliver for our communities across the country, including Latinos and communities of color. This year, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus has been busy. We have taken the Hispanic Caucus on the road to engage communities across the country to talk about how we are putting people over politics and to talk about what we've started and how we need to finish the job. We have done stops in growing Latino areas and also in areas like Las Cruces, New Mexico, where we were able to do a bipartisan event where we had a Republican mayor join us for a presser there to talk about investments in things like infrastructure in rural America and jobs that are going to Latinos, for example, in construction jobs and others. And so we have been busy doing that. That's something we know is important to do, to continue to engage and touch our communities and tell them what we've done, what we're working on, and, of course, hearing from them. The other thing the Hispanic Caucus has done is rolling out our immigration principles, which, of course, happens to be an ongoing issue. We have seen that Republicans are not interested in doing anything to address the southern border. They're not interested in giving the president any resources, not a dime of resources, to address what's happening at the southern border, but, of course, want to continue to campaign on it. The CHC has also been hard at work making sure that we continue to elevate CHC members and nominees with the administration. We have one of our very own, CHC member Lori Trahan is now a member of leadership as part of the DPCC, co-chair of DPCC. We also were successful in advocating for Latinos to be nominated. We've got the first person of Hispanic descent ever to serve on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and Adriana Kugler, the first Latina commissioner on the FCC in 2 decades. We have the first Latina to hold the position of Deputy Secretary, and our former colleague, Xochitl Torres Small, over at the Department of Agriculture. And of course, the more recent, the first Latina to serve as ambassador to a non-Spanish speaking country, Ambassador Natalie Reyes, to the ambassador over in Croatia, somebody who has one of the largest Croatian populations. I take great pride in that. And so we have been super busy. One of the other stops we did on the road was going to Puerto Rico with our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, to talk about the expansion of the largest expansion of health care benefits with the PACT Act. So we have been super, super busy. And of course, we have done a number of policy roundtables, which our Vice Chair of Policy, Darren Soto, will talk about shortly. So while Republicans continue to choose chaos, the CHC will continue to choose fighting for our communities and to choose progress. And so with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our whip, Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your leadership in making sure that, particularly, that we have taken the Congressional Hispanic Caucus on the road. I believe that's the first time in the history of our caucus that we've done that. So I want to start there, because I can tell you that when they came to Houston, not only was it a big hit, it was really necessary, because as you know, in Texas, for many of us as Democrats, we feel that we're under constant attack with our governor's Operation Lone Star and the dollars that he's spending on the border and fighting the administration and doing, I think, some things that a state doesn't have a right to do, particularly under federal law. Then he's also attacked women with the abortion ban, and you've seen some of the results of that. He has not been good at a lot of the issues related to health care, and Texas still remains the state with the highest uninsured rate in the country. And regrettably, as a result of that, my district, which is predominantly Latino, 77% Latino, is number one of the 435 districts that has the highest number of people that are uninsured. So we were glad to receive the vice president who came on the road with CHC, and we focus on those issues, particularly health care, the insulin prices capped at $35, the drugs that the president is now authorized to negotiate under Medicare for lowering the drug prices, and of course making sure that we protect Social Security and Medicare. We met at a senior center, full capacity, and it helps send the message of the job that we're doing, but reassuring people that we know that we still have to do so much more, because it seems that every time that we do something, we're under attack either at the Supreme Court or at the state level, or somebody is trying to tell the president that he cannot do something. So we'll be there to support him to get the job done. Secondly, for me, which was very important, is Dreamers. I carry the Dream and Promise Act for the first time in the history of the Congress. It is bipartisan. I have 4 Republicans who joined me as initial sponsors. And it's important to remember that we still have millions of dreamers who have been in legal limbo, because the courts have either said yes, and then there's appeal, then there's no, and then the president did something, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't. So we're still in court on the actual program. But while we do that, we have a lot of people who helped us through the pandemic, who help us as teachers, as nurses, as our neighbors, who don't know what the next step is going to be. The level of anxiety and uncertainty is at a peak right now, particularly when we saw that the Senate bill did not include Dreamers. And of course, for many of us, that's a non-starter. How can you talk about immigration reform without doing what Americans want us to do, because 70% is the latest polling of Americans who believe there should be a pathway for dreamers. You can't get 70% of the people in this country to agree on just about anything. But they do on dreamers, because Americans support dreamers and dreamers love America. So we'll continue in that fight. Again, it's H.R. 16, the Dream and Promise Act. And we as a caucus will continue to focus on making sure that we grow our numbers. It's important, particularly in those states that are heavily Latino, that we see senators there that are Latino, that we see more members of Congress, and that we help grow the pipeline to ensure that we're at the table when it comes to talking about issues that particularly impact us. With that, I'll pass and yield to my colleague Darren Soto, who has been responsible for all the great roundtables that we've been doing that are very issue-oriented. Darren.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Whip Garcia. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus is proud to put people over politics and work with House Democrats to deliver for all Americans, including the Hispanic community, but especially on jobs, health care, and the environment. We were honored to host 4 quarterly roundtables. We brought constituents up from across the nation to hear from them on issues ranging from environmental justice to the Farm Bill to immigration to health care. In the beginning of the year, we started with an environmental justice roundtable where we identified many different local nonprofits in our communities that would seek out grants under the Inflation Reduction Act to do really important work on pollution reduction, on spreading the word on clean energy opportunities, and we're able to even get technical assistance from EPA to help so many of these nonprofits who've often been left behind on federal funding to be able to apply for some of these important environmental justice grants. We have 6 members on the Ag Committee, so the Hispanic Caucus is at the table for the Farm Bill. We care deeply about SNAP. We care deeply about farm workers, about small family farms across the nation, as well as issues like converting NAP to SNAP in my family's native island of Puerto Rico. We also had an incredible immigration roundtable where we talked about a lot of the issues that were discussed over the last couple of days, from dreamers and farm workers to the border, but also a lot of folks are very appreciative in our community of President Biden granting parole to both Cubans and Venezuelans, Nicaraguans and Haitians. I can tell you in Florida, these are huge diasporas, and we also are very pleased that the President answered the call from CHC to not only grant TPS to Venezuelans, but also an expansion of that. So as we fight for these longer-term issues, it's really important to continue that great relationship with the President. With regard to health care, it was CHC that led the charge after the Medicaid continuous coverage ended in March 31st of this past year to request a special enrollment period. We got to request it to a familiar face, HHS Secretary Becerra, one of our own, who granted a 1.5-year special enrollment period so that literally millions of folks, including Hispanics across the nation who lost their Medicaid, can get onto the ACA. Back in Florida, we see the infrastructure law, the CHIPS Act, and the IRA really delivering for the Sunshine State. We have the biggest CHIPS Act grant in the state going to Neo City and Kissimmee, where we're making aerospace and space microchips, a majority Hispanic county. We're seeing I-4 expanded, airports expanded, Point Santa Parkway, so many different areas. And, with one of the fastest growing regions in the nation, this is absolutely critical for so many commuters, and it means jobs. In addition, we see with the IRA that our school districts are getting electric buses. We're seeing a major manufacturing project with Green Garden Village in our area to make solar panels. We also see that Floridians have the second highest number of electric vehicles of any state, which I think would surprise some folks. This is also key with resiliency because property insurance continues to be a huge issue in Florida. In addition, we're excited to work with FP&L to have what could potentially be the biggest solar project in the nation in South Osceola County, a 150,000-acre project. And finally, healthcare. Florida has by far now the largest Obamacare exchange in the nation. 4.2 million Floridians, literally a quarter of Florida, including many Hispanics from Orlando to Jacksonville to Tampa to Miami, are getting their care through the federal ACA exchange. So it's a great irony when you see some of our elected officials on the Republican side trying to end Obamacare and those running for president when it is as popular as it is in any state, and it's for good reason. Florida has a lot of folks working for small and mid-sized companies, and they don't necessarily have access to employer-based health care all the time. So at 4.2 million, we're very excited for the future of the federal exchange for Obamacare in Florida. And with that, I'll yield back to the chair.
Thank you. I think we'll take a few questions. We'll start with Jesus here in the front.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. What are you doing or what you are willing to do to increase the power of the Hispanic caucus in the Congress? We saw in this latest negotiation about the bipartisan negotiation in the Senate, none of you were in that negotiation, and even one of the most important senators, Alex Padilla, which is running one of the teams there about immigration and the border. So not just this topic, not about immigration, not just about this topic, but about other topics, healthcare, also financial issues. So what is your plan to increase the power and to be part of these kind of conversations? Most important, bipartisan conversations.
Well, representation matters, and who's at the table matters, of course. We have to continue, I think, on the political side to increase our numbers, and that's something that BOLPAC is doing. And we have to, support those candidates. But we have to continue to, I think, work together with the Tri-Caucus, something that the CHC has done very well in this Congress, and making sure that we, continue to not just knock on the door, pound on the door, and our votes matter. And so sometimes that means withholding votes. Sometimes that means continuing to have tough conversations. But it is completely unacceptable that the Hispanic caucus would not be at the table on the issue that we lead on, which is immigration. And I think that's where we need to start and go from here, is making sure that you do have the CHC at the table. As you mentioned, Alex Padilla serves as the chair of immigration on the Senate side, on the subcommittee for the Judiciary Committee over there. So completely unacceptable, and we've got to continue to not just talk about it, but making sure that something is done. So we will continue to fight for that.
I just want to add one thing. And Jesus, I think what's important, too, is to remember what we talked about, the CHC on the road, the roundtables. That's about making sure that the people that we represent know what we're doing, but also so that they can help us amplify the messages, which means they, too, can have their have their voices raised to make sure that they tell the Senate, that they tell McConnell. Remember, we didn't drive this from the House, that our voices do matter, and they, too, can be asking the question, why was Alex Padilla not there? Why was Bob Menendez not there? Why was not one of our senators there? Because we can continue to do everything we can, but the Senate has to see that there's voices behind us, that someone's got our back. So we'll continue to do that.
Okay. Scott?
Chairman, thank you. There are panels at this conference on reproductive rights, obviously on the economy, on AI. I do not believe there's any sort of formal panel on immigration, the border, something that is probably the hottest issue right now in Washington on Capitol Hill with all of these discussions and votes that are taking place. Are you disappointed that I know you guys are talking about these issues here right now, but are you disappointed that there's not a panel devoted to some of those issues at this issues conference?
We actually, and last year, had a panel on it, and the caucus is continuing to talk about it. So there are so many issues, and right now, the American people want to hear about lowering prescription drug prices. They want to hear about lowering costs, which is what our lunch panel is about today. When you go and you talk to people in the communities, it's about healthcare, it's about jobs, it's about costs, and that's what we were able to squeeze in. So we are continuing the conversation on immigration. I mean, it's front and center. And so just because you don't have a panel, it doesn't mean these conversations are not happening. And at the caucus level, in the Congress, at the Capitol, we always have immigration groups come in, and these conversations are happening. So the fact that there's no panel, I don't think is a reflection of the fact that we're not continuing to fight on this, or that we don't, that it's not a priority, not at all. Right here in the front.
Can you speak to that latest Gallup poll that has Hispanic Party preference down from Democrats over the past 3 years, down 20 points according to this poll? Is there anything that you think specifically needs to be done, or is there a reason why you think that people are straying from the party?
I'm not familiar with the poll, but go
take
ahead,
that?
Gary.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'll chime
I
in.
can tell you, being from the Sunshine State, Hispanics are swing voters, right? I never take for granted Hispanics, whether they're Republican, Independent, or Democrat. We have to make the case every 2 years. Many folks are first generation. They may not be as familiar with American politics. And so first we have to show what we've delivered, whether it's jobs, whether it's environment, whether it's infrastructure. Obviously, immigration is something we'd love to see. We did see the president, though, do a lot for the parole programs I mentioned in TPS, which is helping out big time in the Sunshine State. But we have to make our case up until the last moment. We can't count on folks in the Hispanic community to dogmatically vote Democrat. They will vote Democrat majority-wise because we are doing a lot to help the Hispanic community. Meanwhile, the other side, criticizing but doing nothing. It's a tale of two sessions. We had the most productive session in 50 years last term, and we're stuck in the least productive session in nearly 100 years right now. And so the president is going to have plenty of money to make his case, as will House Democrats, and we will be talking about what we've delivered over and over and over for the Hispanic community now until the election. And when I look to the other side, what do they really have to run on other than criticism right now? And so we have work to do, and we have to work every day until the election. But we have a story to tell, and we need to continue to tell it until that day.
And just to add on, a lot of it is how people feel, whether they are feeling the impacts or the effects of everything House Democrats were able to do in the last Congress. They don't feel it yet. So if you think for a moment, the Inflation Reduction Act that had the first time ever to have lower prescription drug prices through the Medicare being able to negotiate prices, that hasn't even got into effect yet. So people are not feeling it. And so when we talk about sometimes the economy and how it's doing so great, it's that people don't feel it. Of course, I think that impacts what you hear. But there's a lot of time between now and the end of the year. We have work to do in making sure we're communicating to communities what we have done. And that's the part of governing. You got to pass the legislation, right? But then you got to implement it. And we are in that implementation phase. We also got to communicate. And that is part of what we need to do. You also haven't seen some of the benefits in the energy cost savings go into effect. And one of the examples I like to give is there are homes where you need electrical panel upgrades. And there are going to be benefits for people to be able to get money to do that. So they could get solar panels, so they could get electric vehicles. People don't feel that yet because some of those haven't been rolled out. So my case would be, we have, when you put House Democrats in charge, we get things done and we deliver. Give us time. Give us time. Put us back into the majority so that we can finish the job, and you will feel those changes, because we have seen that we're able to get things done under a Democratic House. And just compare that to what we have had. The do-nothing Republican Congress that hasn't been able to do anything. And who has saved keeping government open? It's House Democrats who have voted to keep government open, more votes than even Republican votes. The last thing I just want to quickly mention, something that just came out yesterday, I think, was the Congressional Budget Office's assessment on one of the reasons on why the economy and the impact that immigrants have on the economy, and that says that our economy will be $7 trillion bigger, and federal revenues will be $1 trillion larger over 10 years, mostly due to immigrants working in a 3.7% unemployment number. So the economic benefits of our immigrants is helping our economy, and this is often overlooked. It's often not even talked about, but just more evidence on how immigration benefits our country. We are a nation of immigrants, and we should continue to put value and highlight their contributions. As a daughter of immigrants, and many in the Hispanic caucus are either immigrants or the children of or family of, we know that value, so we're going to continue to fight on that front as well. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
White House